let us start with the filmmakers. Jim Cricchi is the director, and Jim, I forgot to ask you, is Cricchi the proper way to say your last name?
Cricchi.
Cricchi, okay, great. Then I should have asked you earlier, but I did not.
It's close enough.
Jim Cricchi and Susan Peters, who is his left-hand woman and his co-producer on the film, right?
Yeah, correct.
So thanks for being, we really appreciate you being here, coming to us from Brooklyn, yes?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, great. Let's see, my upper left-hand corner is Jenny Estrada. The other three faces, I think you're gonna be familiar to those of you who just watched the film or watched it earlier this week. Hi, Jenny. Great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having the film, and thank you to Jim and Susan for spending a year with me.
On my screen, I think everybody's screen looks different, but on my screen, below me is Rebecca Clarke. Hi, Rebecca, how are you?
I'm good, James. Thanks for having us.
And I think everybody who's been watching, who's watched the film realizes that Rebecca is a bundle of energy. And that's coming through loud and clear on the chat so far before we went live as well. So we're looking forward to the conversation. And then Sheila Plotkin, who is our number cruncher. Thanks for being here, Sheila.
Well, thank you for inviting me. This is really exciting. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you all about this. I think I mentioned before we did go live that I just watched the film for a second time, and I'm all fired up again over it. So I've got lots of questions. I think I'm just going to start with the obvious one for Jim and Susan, if you want to both respond. How did you find all these fantastic women? I have an idea that you probably identified like sort of a long list and then a short list of local candidates or local political figures. No, you start just these three. And
I think we got really lucky. We knew we wanted to make a film in the spring of 2018, and we thought we would make a short that summer. And we did a few interviews. We had some ideas what we would film, but when we met Sheila was one of the first people we filmed. We thought Sheila's really interesting. Let's make a broader film about some of these ideas and a more personal film. We were like, we'd like to get to know Sheila a little bit more about what she's been doing, and we knew Jennifer just a little bit from our previous film. Knew who she was. We found out she was running for office. And that's kind of how the summer went. We just sort of jumped from one thing to the other, not really knowing where the film was going to go. And then after about a month of filming with Jenny, we went to an event and Rebecca Clarke was there.
And she was standing against the wall.
Yeah,
she was.
I was.
Lots of jokes.
Right.
Yeah. So immediately, And
it wasn't intentionally. We didn't start out saying, "Oh, this is going to be about the election." We were filming in Rhinelander. We were filming a lot of stuff about a mine that was being proposed there. We were filming in Mount Pleasant, looking at factory that was going in there.
Foxconn.
All of those things ended up getting edited out, but there was a lot of footage.
Yeah, a lot of stories went to the side. We drove about 15,000 miles in 3 months, just lots of different stories, but mostly
These three.
focused on these three. Yeah.
So, Jim, you have a long experience as an editor with 60 Minutes and Vice on HBO, right, and other all kinds of other TV and film projects, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But your first film as a director a few years ago was also based in Wisconsin, and I just put 2 and 2 together and figured out that you met Jenny because of the dairy connection, right? Is that true?
Yes. Jenny worked for was an organizer for Voces de la Frontera, an immigrant rights group, right?
Yep.
And we filmed at the Capitol one day, and Jenny was there with Voces, and that was about a lot of farm workers, actually. So yeah, I guess.
So your first film was about kind of based in the dairy industry in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Why, you know, so are either of you from Wisconsin? I mean, what's the, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you have a connection to the place, right?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
not just two fish out of water from Brooklyn and Wisconsin,
Yeah, no.
two
And
films in a row.
we both spend about half our time there. So we're part-time there all the time for
Mhm.
a lot more the last 3 years.
Okay. So let's talk to the candidates for a minute, or the candidates from the film. Let's see, Rebecca, why don't you tell us what you've been up to since the film was wrapped?
Well, it's never a dull moment in Wisconsin, which I think is why Jim and Susan continually find themselves back here. So, you know, after the lame duck session, you know, like Jenny, I think, you know, there's always something to advocate for. You know, my background, again, in natural resources, I am constantly fighting against air quality,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in Sheboygan County, which is, you know, the worst in the state, and we're 20th in the nation, and we're the #1 manufacturing hub in the state. So, you know, I spent a lot of time on that, and then as it turned out, in January of this year, a county board seat came up. A dear friend of mine who has been on the board for a while, he was actually a state legislator as well. He asked me to help him get signatures. And then about a week after that, he said, listen, would you run for my seat on the county board? And I know a lot of data says that women, when it comes to running for office, they have to be asked, you know, 7 times. You have to ask me once. And I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. So started running in January of this year. You know, February, thank God, had very nice weather, so we were able to knock a lot of doors. March, things got weird. And then April, you know, was even weirder. But it turns out I got elected to the county board in Sheboygan County this April. And that has been interesting.
What's the makeup of the board politically?
I would say it is Republican and myself.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people that have been on there for a long time, 20, 30 years. Jenny, I see you shaking your head. You know.
I do know.
You know, we did have 7 new people get on the board in this last round of elections, which was interesting. But with everything that's going on with COVID, and we've had a lot of protests in Sheboygan County. We have had a lot of people. Girl, have you been seeing what is going on? It's, you know, having to get escorted into the courthouse. I've been called a Nazi, and we're killing children. I've been on the phone for the last 2 months with as many people as I can, trying to educate them about what a public health officer does. It's not a, you know, an
why were the threats happening, Rebecca?
Because it's a slippery slope, Jim. Okay, it's a slippery slope. Okay, masks,
Right.
and then the next thing you know, it's concentration camps. Come on.
Right.
It was mostly because of the masks, right? I mean,
And it was funny because we were trying to pass an ordinance that wasn't a mask ordinance, but, you know, because Governor Evers' mask mandate the stay-at-home thing got thrown out.
right.
Counties were trying to figure out a way to support their public health officers without going to a lawsuit. So they tried to pass an ordinance that would go through 2 committees instead of just the public health office, which they have, it's the law, they can do it. They could still do it. And people were like, well, why do you have so much power in this person who's unelected? And I mean, the good news is if I could get them on the phone, it was okay. But it was a lot of people. So it's been interesting. So I got elected, and now I really want to kick myself.
Well, isn't it what you just said? If you could get them on the phone, you'd be okay. You'd be okay.
Oh yeah.
Doesn't it have so much to do with what's going on nationally right now? I mean, like nobody's. I mean, not just on the phone, but talking to each other like human beings. Everybody's yapping at each other on Facebook or through their silos of their news, their own whatever their news consumption is or whatever, and
Correct.
not actually talking like human beings to each other.
Yes, and that's why I say, I mean, my Facebook page got blown up, and I was like, ooh, that's weird. So I just started to tell people to call me, and let's talk about it. And once I explained, my background is working with kids and daycares and summer camps and what the public health department does. Of course, if I have lice, they're going to shut me down. I'm not going to get fined. I'm not going to lose my license. They're going to work with me, and I'm going to open up again. Well, that makes sense. I know it does.
Right. Exactly. All right. Let's jump to Jenny for a second. And why don't you? I think I asked you before we went live, but are you willing to run again? So actually, I'm just going to mention in the film, Rebecca says, there were positives to running and losing. I would imagine that in the moment, it's hard to see what they are, although Rebecca seemed to do a pretty good job of talking yourself into that. Jenny, did you, you seem to know that it was an uphill battle all along. Would you run again?
Short answer, yes. I absolutely did know that it was an uphill battle, and I didn't expect to win, but I was really happy to have that platform to actually go out and advocate and educate. And as you've seen in the film, we got the most votes out of any Democratic candidate in my district. So we took that as a win because we got more people not only educated on what an assembly person was. I think I spent it was a 3-month campaign for me. It was really short, but it was a lot of work. And I think that the one thing I took out of it was how many people in my own district didn't even know what assembly person is. So of course they're not voting for assembly position and in their best interest because they don't even know what the job entails. So I spent a lot of time of my campaign just doing that. But I would absolutely run in a heartbeat again.
And tell us what you're doing now.
So since then, I started my own 501c3. It's Crusaders of Justicia, based here still in Manitowoc, but we're a statewide organization. We bring immigration law up to Northeast Wisconsin because we don't have any, even though we have the highest concentration of CAFO farms and undocumented workers. We don't have any immigration services. We also provide legal advocacy inside our jails now that they're all privatized. Making it easier for families to be able to connect with their loved ones that are incarcerated. We had a small pantry where we helped about 123 families in the previous year, and now we're up to a little over 3,000 families a week and moving about 70,000 pounds of food with the Wisconsin Hunger Task Force. Mm-hmm. So to say we're busy is an understatement.
And are you still carrying your other jobs?
So I don't make any money here at Crusaders, even though everything that we do,
right.
All of our resources are going into helping families. We have 146 COVID positive families that we're helping and giving door-to-door service so they don't have to come out in the public. So I still have to feed my 5 kids. And as you can see in the video, my child, especially the youngest, is always hungry. So
always.
I have to do multiple jobs. And then last year, sadly, right after the election, I had a bout of cancer and lupus. And so I had some health issues that I've been trying to get under control before I go back and run again.
Oh, wow. Are you okay right now?
I'm not. I'm starting to slip back, but we're still here in the fight, so.
Wow. Okay. Well, we wish you the best of luck. Yeah. We have a great audience question for Sheila. So I'm going to go to that next. So this is from a viewer named Sharon Kennedy. Sharon says, Sheila's data work both disturbed and inspired me. She actually has 2 questions. Are you still collecting the open records data now that there's a Democratic governor? And well, go ahead and answer that.
Yeah, well, yes, I did a couple of times. But right now I'm sort of suspended. The truth of the matter is it's a tremendous amount of work and stress, etc. So at my age, and I'm 82, I like to take some time off. And so, and then in April, I started collecting COVID data because people were so worried about the primary, the April 7th primary. And so I started collecting COVID data, publishing it. I began every day and then backed off to every week, and now I'm every month. Anyway, I haven't done any open records since May of 19, which was when the Joint Finance Committee was putting the budget together, and Governor Evers had put a lot of money for public education, which I know means a great deal to Jenny. And I wanted to know what they were hearing. So that was the last one I did, and it was just to the committee. Will I do it again? I always tell myself, I think I'm done now. Then something happens, and I jump right back in. So
yeah, that's something is Robin Voss. That's what it is.
Yes, yes, yeah.
If you hadn't told us how old you were, I would have said you retired yesterday. So, you know, thanks for doing that work and for appearing in the film. I'm wondering if any of you can tell me, any of you subjects in the film, or, you know, Jim and Susan, you might have a thought on this too. Having, you know, let them come into your lives and film, and then watching the film, did you learn anything about yourselves or the process of running for office that hadn't occurred to you before you became a subject in Jim and Susan's film?
I think I just learned that if I can do it, anybody can. I was kind of wondering like how I even got through those 3 months. But I think and I hope that with this film it empowers more people in our community to run. So I definitely saw myself, and I think I was hard on myself as a mom. I kept thinking I'm too hard and I'm doing these things, but I had some kind of sweet moments in there.
No,
Definitely. Definitely. I loved it when your kids come over and I give them some juice boxes and stuff.
Sugar them up.
There was a lot more. That was some of my favorite footage.
Rebecca, anything? Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I mean, you know, transitioning from being an educator into a politician wasn't really that hard. It's a lot of, the only thing that was difficult, and I can see it because Jenny, you were so good at this and I'm not, you know, telling your personal story and telling, you know, why am I here? You know, I'm not good at that. It was more of, I'm here to help and I see a problem and here's what we can do. Will you join me?
Well,
and I need, you know, I got to get better at those personal story things.
But that seems like it falls right into line with the idea of a teacher, right? Like you're always reaching out and interacting with the community, but not on you're not sort of telling them, oh, here's what's up with my, you know, my immediate family, or, you know, you're not telling your personal stories. You're serving, right? Right.
And it's also about, it's, you know, a lot of times, especially in environmental education, because we have the kids for shorter periods of time than a formal classroom educator, you really have to know where people are coming from in a very short amount of time. So at that door, you have to know, you know, one of the things, Jenny, you and I talked about this with, you know, health insurance, like everyone's like, we're going to do health insurance. And in my county, it's majority people have health insurance through their employer. But if you talk to them, they realize how underinsured they are. They don't have dental, and how out of cost, you know, out of pocket expenses are really, and then once you get that conversation, it's, well, what if we expanded some of these programs? What if we invested in Sheboygan and not just Madison? And that made it a much easier. That's a 20-minute door, though. This is why I'm terrible at this. You know. Yeah.
So Sharon, who asked the question about Sheila's, you know, record work, work with the data. also has sort of a part two to her question. It's not really a question, but she's asking about getting an update on the gerrymandering situation, the redistricting situation in Wisconsin now, since the 2018 election. And that kind of feeds into something that I wanted to ask, which is, do one of you want to take a stab at explaining where the term gerrymandering comes from? I'm wondering if maybe Jim or Susan, you know, or if anybody knows where it actually comes from. Because if you don't, I'll just throw it out there because it's a fun fact.
I can't remember the guy, Jerry's name, but so you might remember, he was in Pennsylvania, right?
No, he was in Massachusetts, actually.
Oh, okay.
That's why I think it's fun to bring it up.
Sorry, go ahead.
His name was Elbridge Gerry,
Right.
and he was the governor of Massachusetts like around 1810 or so, and then subsequently went on to be James Madison's vice president for a little while. But he apparently kind of invented I guess he lost the race for governor a few times, and then somehow got, and then somehow helped institute a redistricting plan through the legislature or whatever, and then he won. So it's named after him. So fun fact. And actually, there's another viewer named Mindy who says, besides saying, Jenny, Rebecca, Sheila, truly amazing, you inspire hope, she also says, my son taught me a little about gerrymandering. Now I understand it even more. So I just figured we'd throw that fun fact out there. But so does anybody want to take a stab at talking about the redistricting situation? Is it any better? Is the legislature addressing it at all?
Well, I was actually one of the plaintiffs, and no, the answer is no. Until it's not going to change until we start flipping some of those seats, honestly. And we can see how horrible my district is cracked and fracked. So it's like, we're hurting in a lot of these districts, and I mean, it's hard to get away with it, even with a little jump in the numbers. And like Rebecca says, moving up 9 points or 3 points or whatever every couple of years, it's not enough. And hopefully that's why we're pushing so hard the census this year, that hopefully a lot of people filled that out.
And one of the reasons why this film, I think, resonates on a national level, or should, is that the redistricting concerns in local areas are similar to the idea of the electoral college, right? Which is being debated right now. Should we abolish it? Because, among other things, whatever the numbers are, since so Rebecca, you were wearing the RBG shirt at one point in the film, which I thought I should point out, right?
Yeah.
When we're talking about Supreme Court justices, the Supreme Court being packed by one side by presidents who have effectively lost the popular vote many terms in a row now, right? Jim, do you want to talk about, or Susan, do you want to talk about that a little bit? The idea about why you felt that pursuing this idea of redistricting or gerrymandering in Wisconsin would speak to some extent to the national political situation?
Yeah, well, I think it explains, in Wisconsin, it's one of the things that really explains why there is such a disconnect between what communities want and what their legislators are doing. So it helps facilitate this really dysfunctional system that is in place right now, where you have people representing you who don't really have to listen to what your opinion is or what the majority of their constituents are thinking about or dealing with. And so it's that's happening nationally, but I think it's really important to be looking at what's happening on the state level, because that is really affecting people's lives more than the federal level in many respects. And Wisconsin is not the only state like this, but Wisconsin has a really difficult process for trying to change their districting process. So Michigan had a referendum, that's great, and they can have a referendum to change it. Wisconsin does not have a binding referendum, and the process of changing how the process happens officially would require multiple legislators to, one legislature would have to pass it, and then it would have to turn over in 2 years, the next one would have to agree to it, is a very complicated process. So it's not something that citizens can just change like that. The governor is has started a committee to recommend a districting process that would then be presented as, hey, look at everybody, look at how fair this is. But because the state legislature is all Republicans and they have kind of taken away a lot of the control from the governor, and there's an attempt to do that even more so with a veto. It's pretty complicated, but it's quite possible that Wisconsin just has no way to get out of this for a long time. I mean, it depends.
Yeah, I want to speak to that, Susan, because I think I was trying to say in the movie too. I mean, the truth is Wisconsin, is a purple state. But if you look at that great graph y'all had with like how many votes we actually get for assembly candidates and then how many seats we get, we're not as purpley as we think. Wisconsin does agree on more than we disagree. They love their parks. Okay. They love the deer herd. They love their local corner public school. They love it. And the thing is, we got a little lazy. And in those off-year elections, we didn't show up. And it hurt because it happened to be a census year and they got to redo the maps. I've heard a lot of people say, oh, we got Tony, we're going to redo the maps. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. We are going to have to win with the maps we have. And I think that that's why, with Jenny and, all these other amazing women that ran up and down the lakeshore, we are trying to give people a choice, because you have to understand with these maps, I was going into the voting booth for 8 years, no choice. One assembly candidate, one state senator. And I said, this is not democracy. This is broken. Sheila.
Yeah, I want to comment on that too, because I think the reason that 48,000 people are ignored when it came to the lame duck session, that number in the film was not the last number, because I sued to get the records I didn't have, and the total went up. The reason they can do that is because they don't really have to listen to those who disagree with them. Their seats are guaranteed at this point. And why would they give that up? So
right.
Susan says we have no way out of it. I'm not smart enough to figure that out. I don't know, other than to have women and candidates like Jenny and Rebecca, whom I have to say, knowing what they were up against and watching how they performed, they are my heroes. Because they are the essence of what democracy looks like. And they inspired the daylights out of me.
Oh.
To be able to meet them and talk with, it's great. I'm really loving that.
Yeah,
but gerrymandering is, to borrow a phrase, the root of all evil.
Right. And I agree with both of you, and you're both simply amazing. But I honestly think that we saw even a little jump in our numbers is because we were finally connecting with people that haven't voted, we haven't given them a reason to vote before. And I was one of those people. I was one of those people that thought, gosh, I don't want to vote for either one of these people. They don't represent me, even if they go. And just because they're on the side of the ticket doesn't make them work for me. So, I mean, I truly believe that running on people before politics, and that's what we need more of. We need more Rebeccas. We need more of the ladies running me that can say, hey, I'm a mom. My kids go to the public schools. I have a family member that's incarcerated. And we're talking about normal people running and inspiring the rest of the people to say, hey, if she can do it, she can talk to me about these issues. When you're talking about people that don't even know what an assembly person does, I mean, that speaks like leaps and bounds. And I think there is a way around it. And it's just about educating, advocating, and really truly being a part of your community. And I think that, we never stop campaigning.
And Jenny, wouldn't you agree too, that we couldn't just go out in the city, right? We had to go out into the farms and to the smaller towns. We had to find voters. And how many people, Jenny, did you encounter that said, no one's been here in 10 years?
Too many to count.
Right?
our tech guru Terry points out something in the chat to me that I'm just gonna for fun. And I actually knew this and forgot it. For whatever reason, Elbridge Gerry, the guy that gerrymandering is named after, you were supposed to pronounce his name. They did pronounce his name in those days, Gary. So technically, it should be gerrymandering, but I've never heard anybody say that. Right? Anyway.
But James, wasn't it also because it was like a salamander?
Yeah.
Like the
The
district that
Mandarin
he
part,
drew?
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Because the district that was, yes, so the district that was redrawn in the Boston area was supposed to be shaped like a salamander. Exactly. That's where the Mandarin half of
That's the
word
teacher in me. Sorry, carry on.
Here you go. Good. So, filmmakers, I have another question for you about choices that you made in the way you've made the film. In particular, I was intrigued by the idea that there's no voiceover. You just chose to tell the story through all of the actual, speaking that's on camera or news reports. I think essentially is all of the voices that you hear in the film. Was there a point, and Susan, you're a writer, right? So was there a point where you were like, well, we tried the voiceover and we scrapped it, or and why do you think that the choice to not have voiceover maybe worked better than the alternative?
It was never really it was never discussed. I don't really like films with voiceover in them, so it was, how do we tell the story with the people in the film, with our interviews and archival footage. So especially toward the end of the movie, as we were editing and had a very long version of the movie, the lame duck session happened, and we were like, okay, I guess this isn't got to be in the movie. And we were not in Wisconsin at that time, so we had to figure out a way to tell that incredibly important story quickly and without footage,
And there were times when there were lots of words. We had lots of cards for a while filling things in, and then eventually we would kind of try and find places where people Jim had filmed with had said the things that we wanted to have, so we could take the words out, including the lame duck session. At some point we had, pages and pages of legislation that was passed during those sessions, and talked to a couple of lawyers who were like, nobody's going to read that. So we had to piece it together with radio to try and convey the magnitude of what happened.
That was really well done. That was superbly done.
I have another behind the scenes question that I think, Susan, you mentioned to me on the phone a while ago, with the Tony Shalhoub connection. So we've been very happy to point out that this is the world premiere of your film. However, there was a sneak peek at it, which technically means that we do have the world premiere, but the sneak peek was at the Martha's Vineyard Film Festival, right? And Tony Shalhoub, the actor from Monk and many movies, presented the film, I think, as you told me, right? In a drive-in setting, right? And can you just tell us, why he became involved with the film? And I think is he a co-producer or something?
He's an executive producer now.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you want to talk about that connection?
So he's from Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Woo!
Yep. He's a Packer fan. We just reached out to him. I had a friend who had worked with him, so she gave me his email address, and he immediately wrote back within like 10 minutes, and the next day called. He and his wife, Brooke Adams, the actress, who's also just very inspiring, phenomenal person. They just really loved the film, and he's someone who has been very engaged in Wisconsin and paid attention to Wisconsin politics, and so it just really resonated with him, and they've just been very supportive in sharing, getting the word out about the film.
Did you know ahead of time that he was politically involved, or did you just know that he was a cheesehead?
Yeah, I did. And Rebecca actually, we had footage of him, but Rebecca saw him in person, so I'll let her tell the story.
Yeah. So during Act 10, those amazing protests that happened at the Capitol, and you know, I was down there 3 or 4 times, which is actually one of the times I met Peter Barca, Jenny. So,
Sheila was there. Jenny,
and
I'm sure there.
and Tony spoke. I think his sister is a teacher from Green Bay, and he spoke very passionately and very, you know, but also with humor about, you don't mess with teachers. Their signs are more clever than your laws. But he was there in the cold for 3 days. So I was like, that's right. You don't mess with teachers. So that's kind of my connection with it. So I figured Susan, I was like, oh my gosh, of course he would jump on this. So he's been paying attention.
Yeah.
I think I want to ask all of you to just address, if you can, something that Scott Walker says in the film. You know, he's talking about the voter ID laws that they passed, and it seems like probably something he said, you know, over and over again. In Wisconsin, it's easy to vote but hard to cheat. You know, he tries to make it about, well, if you're going to try to cheat by voting when you're not eligible, it you know, puts the onus on the others, on the opposite side of the aisle from him. And you know, when he says that, that's when I really kind of got my back up, because the whole idea of the voter ID, the voter suppression stuff, that's cheating, isn't it?
Yep. I mean, he's the last person that should be talking about cheating. I mean, especially with the whole lame duck session. And, you know, I mean, his whole governorship was about cheating people out of their right to live, to, you know, right to work. So, I mean, that's all that guy is about. I mean, it was just absolutely disgusting. And I said, you know, we may have lost, and I know I said this to Rebecca, I said, but I am so happy that we were out there campaigning and Evers won, because to me it was a win. If we could make Evers win, it was a win, and it was a step forward. And then coming through with that lame duck, I mean, that's all this is. It's a cheat on all of us citizens here of Wisconsin.
And there's no data to support. I mean, anybody who pushes voter ID laws, there's no data to support that even happens, that people, you know.
Right.
So
Sheila, you
I
said it. Sheila said
yeah.
it to us one time about the right to vote and not needing, I don't know if you'll remember what you said, but we were just having a conversation and you put it really beautifully about, you know, it's my right to vote. I shouldn't have to prove
Exactly.
who I am. I shouldn't have to have an ID that's not expired. It's still who I am. There's all these hoops that.
And the propaganda is what Scott Walker was spewing. Because if you can win the war of the words, then you can sell that concept any way you want to. We see that happening nationally all the time.
We've been seeing that since at least Reagan, right? I mean, like that's how that side, well, I shouldn't say the other side. We welcome all people of all political persuasions at the Newburyport Documentary Film Festival to watch our film. But you know, isn't that the genius of has been the genius of the Republicans for years, is that they win the war of the words by framing things the way they want to.
They have all the best words. There's no question. Well, I mean, think about it. Right to work. What does that even mean?
Right.
But it sounds good. Yeah, of course I want the right to work.
Yeah.
And then you turn it into a policy that makes work more of a burden than a benefit to the people who are trying to do it in unsafe conditions. So the problem with that is that it's a problem that I think that both Jenny and Rebecca intuitively know how to cope with, and that is by talking about things that are common ground. I just gave a speech on Saturday about finding common ground, and it exists. Wisconsinites care about their environment. We have to switch the conversation, and I think the only way you do that is one-on-one. It's very difficult to fight against the propaganda machine that we're dealing with now.
Right.
And the fact that Jenny says she wants to run again. I mean, that's the essence of it. right? Some very wise person once said that democracy is a life, not an election. And that's what they are living. That's what we're all trying to live.
And they're just completely corrupt, even on our side. I mean, Jim and Susan, I don't know if Susan was there, but Jim was definitely there. I was on the ballot and I got purged from the system. I had to re-register at the poll. And I obviously was registered because I was on the ballot. I mean,
Wow.
it's just insane.
I think the biggest thing too is I think like you were saying, Sheila, Walker had the taglines. But if you really listen to people on the ground, what Glenn Grothman said on the news was, we've got these laws and it will cause disenfranchisement of voters. So that's great. Like, they're not even hiding it anymore. They're not hiding it. It's out there. And that's a real problem, because what happens then, Sheila, is people get desensitized to it.
Yes.
And the thing I can tell you, James, going to doors, in 16 and then in 18, what was heartbreaking is how confused people were. So I went into a assisted living home, and I had a woman who had voted at the same place for 30 years, but she never drove a car. She didn't know where her marriage license was or her birth certificate. What is she going to do? And she was in tears. I had another woman, I knocked on the door in 2018, and I said, well, you're ready to vote, right? And she said, well, I don't have my voter ID yet. And I was like, oh, well, do you have your driver's license? Yeah. Is it valid? Is it up to date? Yeah. That's your voter ID. Oh, I thought they were sending us something in the mail that was a voter ID card. And I'm like, no, no. People were genuinely confused, just like they're confused about their maps. I had people call me and say, Rebecca, I went to vote and you weren't on my ballot. I'm like, I know, but I only live 5 blocks away. Yeah, I know. I know.
All right, so I've got another audience question that I want to get to, and I feel like we could have a 2-hour conversation, but people just watched an hour and a half.
I'll shut up.
So, but this is an important question, and then I have 1 or 2 things to wrap up with, I think. Viewer named Kathleen Hoey wants to know, can you all talk a little more about ALEC, who seems to be the place where most of these Walker policies originate? So that's kind of like, I think it maybe goes back a little bit back to the idea of, sort of staying on message, and the idea of, framing things with the words that they want to use and all that. It all does come from these sort of secretive, behind the scenes funnels for the agenda, right? And so who wants to take the first crack at explaining ALEC to, go ahead, Sheila.
Well, what I know about it is that it is a collection of corporate lobbyists who bring legislators from their states. They have a scholarship program. They bring them in, they all sit in a room together, and oh my goodness, and they write legislation.
Yeah.
And then the legislators are told, so look, we've got all this money for you. Now you go back like a little boy or girl, and you pass this legislation, and now we've got you. So that's how it's all done. And you could see that when all those laws, Castle Doctrine and voter ID and all the rest, they all popped up all over the country after 2010, when the Republicans took over one state house after the other. But ALEC is behind a lot of this. They craft what they call model legislation, and then legislators make money by taking it home. The days when citizens could call up their representative and say, this is a problem here, and I think we should have a law. And so they would sit down and they would write it together. ALEC has taken that over, so that doesn't happen too much anymore. Occasionally, maybe.
And I think Jim and Susan, wasn't Chris Taylor, doesn't she go to those meetings like a rock star?
Yeah. She's one of the few Democrats that went for years. And I think Mark Pocan before her. But one thing we wanted to put in the movie, and never did because there was just too many things to put in the movie, was how many people are in ALEC. You know, it would have been nice to go, what percentage of your assembly are ALEC members, and how many? I think there's 2,000 or 3,000 members nationwide, something like that.
But there's a great organization that does work nationally, but they're based in Madison, Wisconsin, the Center for Media and Democracy,
Right.
and they very carefully track ALEC and have great resources, but they do not have a list of current members. Nobody.
No, and
Not
people were
public.
backing away from it, Susan. So
Yeah.
like Vorpagel, they all used to be, and now they're not a part of it anymore.
Well, a few
So-
controversial things happened, right? Yeah.
They're not
Yeah.
listed.
I'm
They
totally
were the
surprised.
ALEC. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I'll shut up.
I was just gonna say, I'm totally surprised to hear you say, Jim, that Chris Taylor went to those meetings. You would think that if she's a Democratic lawmaker, that they would be basically the sergeant at arms would say, "Get the heck out of here."
But it's supposed to be open to anybody, so I'm
Really?
surprised that more people don't go. You know, wouldn't you want to know what your colleagues are going to bring to, you know?
Are told to bring to the table, you mean?
Right. I mean, you would think more people that are not Republicans would go more. Yeah.
Okay, so this is, I think, basically how I want to wrap up, and it's in line with one of our viewer questions. So Sharon Kennedy says, in this political climate, how do you all keep positive and encouraged to keep pushing? So that I want to point out a couple of the scenes in the film. Obviously, Jenny and Rebecca and Sheila, you lived these. So the 2011 rally, that, you know, massive rally about the workers' rights issues. And then again, the State House situation where people were protesting the ramming the laws through in the lame duck session. How do you sustain the energy that comes with those and I mean, this is going on across the country with climate change, with Black Lives Matter, with a dozen different things right now. The energy is there, and then, you know, after a while, people have to move on to the next thing, or, you know, go put out the next fire, or get back to their regular lives or whatever. How do you sustain the energy?
I'll speak to that. Anger helps a lot. And the fact of the matter is, the way I look at this is that's what they want me to do. That's what this shock and awe is all about. One earth-shattering, oh dear.
It's okay.
Did we lose her?
Oh, did she freeze up?
She did.
I think maybe her battery died.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know, Jenny. I mean, we have each other, but what do you think?
Well, I don't have the anger part. I think that there's so much hope for me that, I mean, at least in my instance in my life, I think that my life is constant chaos. And I think that of that, I find that little bit of hope every single day. And sadly, we're behind a lot of those protests. We were out in Beloit, and I got shot with rubber bullets, and we got tear gassed. And I think it's finding those stories, to fight for. And I think that that's the one thing that I can't say that there's anything good about this current administration. But I think that the one thing that it is doing is it's taking all those singular fights that were before, like the immigrant rights, the LGBTQ, the women's fights, the Black Lives Matter fights, the climate change. And I think that we're finally coming to a common ground and saying, hey, we're all being attacked from the same place. So I think it's every day banding with more and more people that are willing to fight for honesty and decency and equality. And I think that's what keeps me going. And I think that, you know, for anything for our kids, I know Rebecca will agree, as being, you know, a teacher, and me with my preschool at home, but I think that they're our future, and they're what keeps me fighting every single day, because we cannot leave them with this mess.
Right. I think for me, what's always been an inspiration is, and it was a process for me too. I didn't just figure out like, hey, I'm going to drive to the Capitol today and I'm going to lobby for our soil and conservation staff to not get cut. it's a process. And then I think the key is to slowly kind of, how do I help people figure out how to do that as well? It's not scary. They're just people. Go to their office, show up. And then when that stops working, then you run for their office.
Yeah.
You know, and it sounds insane, and but it's really not. I mean, again, you know, when I was asked to run, you know, you talk to your friends, you talk to your family, and nobody said, Rebecca, this is really weird. It's a bit of a leap. Naturalist, politician. They were all like, you really need to do this because we're sick of you talking about these issues. So you should probably go to Madison and be done with it. Now I'm at the county level now, and I'm seeing how critical that is too. And I encourage anyone to reach out to me if you're curious how to run locally. We need you. And because just like you said, Jenny, you know, all of these things, climate change, education defunding, vouchers, you know, all this stuff, I'm seeing it on the other side as well. You know, they're getting people rallied around masks and, you know, health care, you know, independence, whatever. But I think we have to outlast them. I learned my lessons from 2010 when we were lazy. I'm never going to be lazy again. Never. You can't stop. There she is.
Sheila.
Sheila's back.
Hi, Sheila.
Sorry, I am sorry about that.
No problem.
It was plugged in and suddenly it said the battery died. Go figure. Okay, but here I'm back, if only so that I could say goodbye to everybody.
So one of our viewers says she'd love to recommend that more people watch the film after our festival is over, obviously. So she wants to know something that I think a lot of people are going to want to know. Will it be available more widely? And if I understand correctly, Jim and Susan, you just made some decisions about that?
Yes, it's going to screen with the Wisconsin Cinematheque in the first week of October. But we're also going to have it on Amazon, VOD, and Vimeo, and possibly iTunes. We haven't figured that out yet. But so it's going to be available on Amazon to buy or rent. And you just search by the title.
How soon, how quickly is that going to happen?
Within a week.
Oh, wow. Okay. So within a week, people can stream it on Amazon.
That's right.
And the other, and Vimeo and other platforms.
Yeah. And we have a Facebook page that is informative. It doesn't have a ton of stuff, but and a website. But really, we just decided we were talking to some distributors, and that everything was kind of slow and not happening on the timeline that we needed, or people were indecisive, and we just figured. After spending some time with Rebecca and Jenny recently, we were like, we just need for people to see this right now. So we're just gonna put it out there. And
yeah.
Hey, don't put that on me.
Totally your fault.
No.
Our Facebook page is 12 Letter Films.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. The production company, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
I would like to just say that I think it's really, I'm so glad you're doing this, because it's really important for people to see this film, I believe, especially now, and especially in Wisconsin, but all over the nation. People are struggling with how do we manage all of this? And inspiration, we've all talked about inspiration. We got a couple teachers here. We know about inspiration. And it's so important, and this film does that in many ways. So I'm delighted that it's going to be out there.
And along those lines, Sheila, just to kind of say, James, you know, Jennifer and myself and Chris Ralph and Emily Segrist and Liz and and Nanette, we all ran together. You know, we shared events, we shared money. I mean, we split the events. And yeah, we didn't win in 2018, but at the end of 2018, the Republican Party of Wisconsin was bankrupt. We broke the bank. How many women ran, Jenny? You said it in the movie, and I forgot.
53 or something?
Yep.
40.
It was 48.
40.
But
Oh, 48.
48. It's close.
yeah.
Close.
was
So
exciting.
just to, you know, run together, run as you are, run.
Well, we we were really thrilled to show the film and premiere it. And it's great talking to you all. Thank you so much for being with us, Jenny, Rebecca, Sheila, Jim, and Susan. Best of luck with the film going forward. Best of luck with your state and the state of your state. And we look forward to hearing more from those of you in Wisconsin, moving the state in the right direction, hopefully. And real pleasure talking to you all.
And
Good,
James,
thank
can I
you.
say just thank you so much for premiering the film and also for bringing all of us together in this conversation, because
I know.
this is a first. So it was really
I
fun.
miss you guys. I miss you guys. Jenny, I'm going to call you probably like tomorrow or something.
We wish you were on the stage and
Yeah.
in person.
Are you sure? Are you sure?
Yeah, he's sure, and so am I.
Love you, Sheila. Thank you for your work. My favorite scene in the movie is you with the pencil sharpener. I'm like, ooh.
My
It's
granddaughter
getting
said
real.
the same thing. I love my pencil sharpeners.
Well, I'm going to miss you all as soon as we hang up, but I think it's time to go. So have a great night.
Thanks so much.